Good morning, everyone. Welcome to continuing our wonderful discussion of Shmiras HaLashon. I hope everyone has had a beautiful, beautiful Chag. Today's class is going to be taking us through Book 2 over here. We are in 9, Chapter 9. And we're going to talk about Shmiras HaLashon as we find it in the Parshios of the Torah. So we'll see how much we can learn through today. I think we'll get through 2 chapters. They're relatively brief, but if it takes a little longer to explain, it'll take a little longer to explain. What's a little learning here or there? Just whatever learning we can do together is good, and to go over it and learn through things again. All right, so let's start with Parshas Bereshis. So the Gemara says, the Gemara in Arachin. So in 15b, this is a long sugya on different topics in Lashon Hara. And we're talking about the case over here, as we've quoted. Yeah, for Sukkot, with Sukkot we have time. So we've brought up this section before. And we were talking about over here. It's Rabbi Yochanan quoting the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. Someone who recites Lashon Hara is as if they deny the existence of God, okay, or that God doesn't have any power. Right? It's called kafar v'ikar in the Hebrew. They deny that there's any essence or any root to the laws we've been given. Why? Because it says in Tehillim, this is in 12:5, that we have said to our tongues that they are stronger. So you are mightier with the lips, and therefore you are with us. So meaning that if we use our lips and tongues, we have great strength. What does that mean? So someone who is quick-witted with their tongue, okay? And they say how amazing they are. He says, "Hey, everything that I say should be listened to." Well, what's going to happen is he's going to consume himself with his own tongue. So meaning that he thinks that there's some power to it and that it provides him with a certain amount of influence. That's actually his downfall, it says. Because he's saying, hey, I can do whatever I want to. I have all this influence. And that's going to actually lead to the opposite happening. Okay? Because what our own lips deny to us, they are also able to cause someone to be unpleasant, to basically give them an unpleasant odor around other people. And in a sense, by using it to think you can generate power from it, you think that you have some influence over everything, because you act like you can see everything that's going on, but really you are not the one who is. There's one above you who does all of that. So they're all types of sins, and the truth is that some sins come as a result of some type of lust that you have, like you desire something. Some of them come as a result of just wanting to get money, right? You have a desire to be wealthy. And these things are very powerful influences on you. And through them, you'll stumble and err and do this type of sin, which is not the same thing of Lashon Hara, right? You say something nasty about your friend. What do you get from that, right? No. What it says is much similar to what it says in the verse over here. This is in Koheles, chapter 10, verse 11, which we'll read this weekend, Be'ez Hashem. If you're in Ashkenazi congregations, those of you practicing this Sfar will not read it, so go ahead and read Koheles anyway. There is no hope for the one who lives by the tongue. Which is saying that something that Hashem would say to the one who just is all over the place. Meaning he lets his tongue loose anywhere, and he's not worried at all about what his Creator has commanded him to avoid. And so therefore, he's like one who denies the whole thing. And there's also in the book known as Sefer Yerim. Okay, so the book Sefer Yerim is a book written in the medieval period, and he is famous for quoting a number of important statements. So he says the following about Lashon Hara. Someone who wants to say Lashon Hara, he explains, is someone who looks at every single opportunity in and around an item and everything around a person, and he makes himself have a higher vantage point over that person, like he's looking down on them, like if he's standing over them. Okay, and he acts like that what's happening around him is something else that no one else would see. Like he's the one who sees everything, and that Hashem is not the one who sees everything. And in some sense, he acts almost like a thief. Like no one's going to see me stealing because I'm out at night. Hashem knows what you're doing. And so when you think about Lashon Hara into its deepest core, about when it first starts, that comes through the actions of the Nachash, of the serpent that's in the Garden of Eden. And the truth is that the serpent himself didn't believe that Hashem was going to actually punish anybody for taking of the fruit of the tree. What does it say to Chava? This is in the 3rd chapter of Bereshis. Okay, 3:5. It says, "For we know that what God will do on the day in which you eat this fruit, that you will have your eyes opened up." And Rashi explains, what does it mean that your eyes will be opened up? So Rashi quotes a midrash to explain. Many people who engage in a craft hate their colleagues who also engage in that craft. Okay? And so it seems like this is a type of tree where you would eat from it and be able to create the entire world. So what he's trying to say is that he would be jealous of you because your intelligence would rival his own. And so therefore, he doesn't want you to open up your eyes to see how creative you could possibly be. And so therefore, you would be just as powerful as God. And that's why he doesn't want you to eat it. But what happens instead, this causes people to actually bring death into the world. This was what we call mita keneged mita. This was perfectly meted out justice. And it's perfectly meted out. Because all the things that are created in the world seem to hate other things around them and want to kill them, right? They're in competition, right? So, and we even say that later on when Hashem is talking to Chava, he says, I'm going to put some discontent between yourself and the serpent, right? And you're going to stomp at his head because he's going to try to bite you, okay? Which is not something that was limited to that. That was not the only punishment because his legs were removed, right? You should walk, because Hashem tells the serpent you're going to walk on your stomach as if he had legs previously, and you'll eat dirt, right? So he took a whole bunch of things, but he also took away his ability to speak. There's a lot of problems dropped onto the Nachash, onto the serpent. So the person who is one who masters his use of Lashon Hara, who constantly engages in it, and tries to point out all the negative parts, all the negative nature inherent in other people, and bring them to light. Everyone hates him, and they will keep themselves away from that person, because maybe they're going to, ruin how they feel about themselves and make them feel ostracized. And so too in the world to come, where a person be worthy to be revived, they're going to have nothing to say for themselves. They can't even open their mouth. Because the rabbis say this in the Midrash Devarim Rabbah, chapter 6, that the Holy One, blessed be He, mita keneged mita again, right? He will take out the tongues of those people who use them for wicked speech. Okay? It says Hashem will cut off the mouths of the slick speakers. Okay? And those who say great things, meaning they just try to run their mouth to say not nice things. And so, as a result, that's when they're talking. As a result, we're talking about at the time when they were revived. Not going to happen to them while they are alive. They have a chance to do tshuva while they're alive. Afterwards, when it's say time to come back, no, we're not going to let you come back with a mouth. And who could measure the great pain that would be suffered by not having a mouth? Especially when you're going to be insulted without having a mouth for eternity. Because everyone will know, hey, this guy was Mr. Bad Speech his whole entire life, or Mrs. Bad Speech. And they engaged in terrible things. And with their wicked and slick sayings, they would put poison in between people. Just as the verse itself says, and this is again in Koheles, Ecclesiastes 12:13. At the end, all things considered, right? This is the last chapter in Koheles. And in the Aramaic translation, it'll say, when we look at the last thing, what does that mean? All the things that people have done that are going to be reviewed, okay? And they're going not only reviewed, but also made public. So go ahead and see that whole midrash over there. And so therefore, this punishment is meted out to them because these people, while during their lifetime, engaged in full-fledged speech, just like they are going to now. And this one will have to be silenced because that's going to be his reward for using Lashon Hara. And so therefore you can see just how terrible and awful the punishment is and how awful the sin is, because it stays with you forever. So just like we find that by the serpent he was punished for the way in which he is fed, okay, meaning not only that he couldn't speak anymore, but he couldn't feed himself like with normal food. So he was compensated with eating dirt. So they always ask the question, right? So, but there's always dirt all over the place. So the Chavetz Chaim says, so this is what happens to a person who is constantly speaking evil of others, is punished with this sin. And this is written in another book called the Sefer HaKnah. The Sefer HaKnah, there we go, come back camera. The Sefer HaKnah is similarly a book that talks about a lot of these issues, but it's written much later on. Not like the Yirei mentioned earlier. That all those who speak Lashon Hara, they receive a punishment. What's the punishment? Tzaras. They get tzaras, right? We've learned about that by Parshas Mesorah. And it says at the end of his work that someone who doesn't get that one, then what their punishment is going to be instead is they're going to be punished with poverty, because poverty is the equivalent of tzaras. Because basically, you are handed over to people and they manage what you do and what you don't do. But the truth is, which seems to be the most incredible thing, is that people nonetheless try to find ways in which they can seek success in their endeavors from some holy person. What good is getting these little trinkets and blessings from holy people and these blessings, right? If they still go ahead and sin with Lashon Hara and they spread evil tales. So this is a punishment that the Torah gives you, right? Arur ma karehu b'saser, right? We read that a couple weeks ago. It's in Devarim 27:24. Someone who says Lashon Hara about his friend, right? You say things quietly. That's what Lashon Hara is. And Rashi says it there. And the Gemara brings it well in Shavuos 36a. The curse is that you shall be yourself crippled from this curse. You will be removed from amongst other people. This came from none other than the entire Jewish people standing there amongst the Kohanim and the Leviim, just like it says. And that is why we see how very powerful the whole thing can be. That even the whatever blessing you think you could get is eroded by this curse that was uttered at that time. So if you listen to what I'm saying and you take to mind what I'm trying to tell you what to do, that you should keep yourself as far away from this sin as possible, especially to do anything that would hurt your friend. That could be something that would be some type of theft, some type of violence, some type of oppression, anything like that. because these are things whereby you're basically throwing away your assets and dumping all your money into things that are worthless. They're gonna be basically buried. You're gonna be buried underneath all this nonsense. And there's a book called Svas Tamim that, in the second and third chapters, brings down so many relevant statements of Chazal, the rabbis, and the Talmud. And if you follow those things, that's how you're actually going to get any types of blessings, more than any type of little trinket that you could get from a holy person. Because every curse ends up being broken through and starts with this one blessing. Blessed is the one that does not strike his friend. And everyone said amen to that. And that type of bracha should come true. Okay, so that was 9. Here is number 10. Let's talk about Parshas Noach. So we said, in the case of Parshas Noach, so there it says that that in the story there, this is in Bereshis, chapter 9:22, that the brothers were told by Ham, the other brothers. So Ham goes out and he tells the other brothers, "Hey, our dad is like debased in the room." So that was his problem. That was what Ham did wrong, because he didn't really cover him up. He was like, look at how terrible he looks. Let me tell my brothers about this, right? And so they made it a public debacle, and didn't care about what impact that had on their father. So it really was something that they shouldn't have done, and it was improper to do. Okay, so that's an example of Lashon Hara. Okay, in Parshas Vayetze. In Parshas Vayetze, the example is in chapter 28, verse 20. And the pasuk, it says that Vayishmereni b'derech hazeh asher anochi holech, right? That by Yaakov, he says that God guards me where I'm going. The Midrash over there says that, what does he guard me from? Lashon Hara. And so Chazal said this actually in the Sifrei, and the Sifrei is not on the book of Bereshit, it's on Devarim, right? So, and we see that this is said by Ki Teitze, right, in chapter 23, verse 10. So when you go out against your enemies, right, you should stay away from every evil thing. So what evil things were you guarding yourself from? Lashon Hara. So when a person goes to a dangerous place, you need to have a little extra guardianship. Okay? So it says that it says especially over there, and then in Pasuk 15, in that same place, that Hashem is there to guard you. Okay, and so therefore, Lashon Hara removes the presence of God from amongst the Jewish people, and there's no one to protect it. So when Jacob was going to Lavan, so it was dangerous for him to go there. And we know that when the whole thing ends, that Lavan was trying to kill Yaakov, and Hashem stepped in and said, "No, you can't attack him." Well, and we immortalize that with a statement that is made by when one brings their first fruits to the temple, Arami Ovid Avi, which we translate as an Aramean sought to destroy my father. So it was Lavan tried to destroy Yaakov. So therefore, what happened was Yaakov Avinu prayed that he not be caught himself up in the language of Lashon Hara. So we actually covered quite a bit today. We'll pick up on more parshos next time. We'll pick up in chapter 11, and we'll be doing some parshos here for a little bit for the next few weeks. There's a lot of parshos that the Chafetz Chaim goes through. So keep that in mind, at how different parshas teach us about the sin of Lashon Hara. So with this one, we're concluding by saying Lavan was a big Baal Lashon Hara, but that wasn't the main point. The point was that Yaakov knew that he was only going to be protected by staying free of the sin of Lashon Hara. So it's much more important to focus on what you yourself are contributing to protect yourself, and not pointing at other people, keep me away from him because he's a Baal Lashon Hara. No, worry about yourself. Worry about what you do. Don't worry about them. Hashem will take care of them if you take care of you. Everyone have a good yantif, a g'madim simcha, and we will see you next week, same time, same channel. more laws protecting us from lashon hara.